Welcome back to Bastionland broadcasting after a week off the air. We are back and it's been a busy week. This isn't why I was off air last week, but I've been relatively productive and I've made a thing that is very silly, and I'm not going to do a sort of 9-hour Electric Bastionland style deep dive into this, but I would like to just look through it and maybe point out some of the things that are in there. I am of course talking about the number one festive themed supplement for Electric Bastionland, and that is, why has this gone? Okay, we're having technical problems despite me saying everything was running smoothly. I'm going to jump over to it now before it decides to vanish again. But here we go. Electric Bastionland, 12 Failed Careers of Oddmus. So the idea behind this was I've thought for a while about doing something with some more failed careers, because they seem like something that people enjoyed about Electric Bastionland and they wanted a bit more of it. But there were a lot in the original book. Like there's 112, I think, and not all of them were written by me, but I think 100 of them were by me, or maybe 100. Yeah, 100 of them were by me, 12 were by other people, I believe. And I challenged myself to do 100, and I'm happy with what's in there, but it took a lot of my creative energy to get those 100 written up. So to say I was out of ideas after doing that would be pretty fair. So I didn't want to just give you like the crumbs left on the table of things that weren't good enough to put in the original book. So I put the idea on hold for a bit, and then I was reflecting a little bit on the whole after Into the Odd came out, which was sort of November 2014. I did the Oddvent Oddpendium the following December, which was partly an excuse to use a silly odd-based pun, but that had like some extra material, and I just kind of liked the idea of doing like a little festive release. So with very short notice, I decided to put together something based on a joke idea. Like so many of my ideas, this started as a joke, and now it's a thing. The 12 Failed Careers of Oddmus. So this is currently up for sale. It's on itch.io and DriveThru RPG. I would recommend you buy it from itch because it's a bit fairer to me that way. Let's do this properly so we can enjoy this very familiar spread. So yeah, the rules are in here. So I can't fathom the idea that you're watching this stream or this video and you don't already own Electric Bastionland. But if you don't, this is technically, I guess, kind of like a self-contained RPG, because when the rules fit on one page, I always kind of think, just put them in there. And there's a little bit of a word about what Oddmus is in the context of Bastionland, and what does it mean to have a winter festive holiday. And there's a random drinks generator. Now, in the interest of sticking to the original theme, which is of course the 12 Days of Christmas song, I'm going to go backwards because it just makes more sense that way. If you're not familiar with the 12 Days of Christmas song, I realise that it's not a staple of every culture in the world, but this is going to make very little sense. But if you are familiar with the 12 Days of Christmas song, I'm sure it's stuck in your head, much like it has in my head since about the age of about 5 years old, probably. So what we have is 12 failed careers, and I just thought I'd try and challenge myself to see how many stupid Christmas references, and a lot of them are Christmas song references, can I put into these careers. So part of me was like, shall I just not explain this? But a lot of the times I'll put these references in and then nobody ever finds them. So I'm going to pick out one from each of these careers that I would like to hang a spotlight on and say, look, this is what this is a reference to, and then you can imagine you've discovered it for yourself. So I'm going to hide myself so we can actually see here, because the first reference here, as well as having 12 failed careers, you also get 12 new debt holders. Little Ron, a mock pony that seems nice enough, but has some horrifying contacts in Bastion's worst circles. Sends you encouraging postcards through your journey with hints of menace. Now, the clue here is in the name. Little Ron is Ronette, as the French might say. The Ronettes. Because I wanted to have something from the Phil Spector Christmas album represented without having to include Phil Spector himself for various reasons. So yeah, that's what Little Ron is. What else? I think that's the big one on here. Yeah, and the Drumbelleer. One of the things that I really enjoyed about doing research for this was the idea that I'd assumed that the 12 Days of Christmas song was relatively, set in stone, the 12 items that were received. But they actually vary a lot throughout the years, and 12 drummers drumming, as what I would know it as, in various versions, it's 12 bells are ringing. So I wanted to have something that used drums and bells for this one. 11, Primal Piper. So for the 11 pipers piping, gone for a kind of Pied Piper thing here. There's some very obvious silly references here, like Vancer and Pricks and Comet Studies. The names are based on parts of a bagpipe. And the way that I do these names, I think I spoke about this when I did the Electric Bastionland read-through. I will find like words that are related to the career and then just kind of twist them a little bit, like change a letter around or something, or just spell it wrong. But then what happens is I come back to it and I forget because I didn't know these words in the first place. So if you are an expert on bagpipes, you may well get a kick out of these sweet bagpipe references that are hidden in here. The LAD-A-LOOPIN or LAD-A-LOOPIN. This is obviously the Lord A-Leaping. This is something that this probably feels like the one that could most fit into Bastionland. It feels like almost like a gap in the failed careers. Because I talk a little bit in the book, there's a few little references to like electric music being a thing. And I was kind of imagining just like plugging analog instruments into like a speaker or into an amplifier. But the idea of like a very early DJ, sort of using magnetic tape and like, huge reels, that really appeals to me. And in case it's not obvious, the art that's been used for this is public domain artwork. And this one, I struggled to find something that was suitable for this because I had a picture in my head of like a sort of early DJ using these big reels of tape, and I feel like it's torturing myself to think this. But if I had gotten Alec to do the art for this, I feel like I could really see how he could have brought that image to life really well. But being that I was restricted to public domain for this project, I'm pleased that I got something that at least looks like an early musical tape device, perhaps, but very different to what I would have thought of myself. But I think it works. Now, the fun thing about this is you get to come up with 6 ridiculous music genres, and the sort of the little reference in here. I mean, you can't see my. Let me hide my head again. You got Donner Lightning down here for your Donner and Blitzen. There's a lot of reindeer representation in here. The Wham button, Wham goes without saying. There we go. The LAYMAN DUNCER for the ladies dancing. There is a lot of there's a lot of very hard work going into twisting these words to fit the original scheme of the song. it's kind of related to like the academic debater in Electric Bastionland, but this is more just straight up. It was more about shaming people rather than like actually being interested in the debate. You're more interested in catching people that perhaps have slightly stepped out of their depth in an area, and you can step in and be a complete pedant about it. Which I'm sure we've all been there on one side of that interaction or the other. What is the references in here? Two people have come to me and said, "Oh, you put SCOTUS in here as one of the sample names. You're making a real political statement there." Well, until like November this year, when I became very interested in what was happening in American politics, there was I wouldn't have known that SCOTUS meant Supreme Court of the US, to be honest with you. So it's not that. What these names are all based on, they're all based on people's names who were involved in, what's the word? This is the thing. I learned just enough to be able to come up with the stupid names, and I instantly forget. It was to do with like scholastic learning, or it's something to do with like it was derived from. I looked up who invented the dunce's cap. And the person who invented that was involved in a particular school of education, and I followed various people that used various names from people that were involved in a similar sort of thing. Malady milker is just a horrible phrase to say. Again, we've got a pretty clear reference. I don't know. I feel like this is a clear reference in the debt holder. The Society for the Protection of Dry Burglars. So you get a safety helmet that protects you against objects dropped from above, and grip shoes which protect you from slipping on things. So yeah, this is your Home Alone nod in here. And what were the? I don't know. I already can't remember what these names, are from. The Sworn Swimmer. Now, there's definitely something in here. The Union of Waitresses and Rappers. Is Christmas wrapping by the waitresses. This is like ridiculous. Like, I sometimes I'll come up with a concept and then the public domain art really goes beyond what I was imagining. So I had Sworn Swimmer from like Swan at Swimming, but I didn't want to do something that was related to a swan because we already had a lot of bird action in the previous entries, so we haven't got to them yet. But there's a heavy lean towards birds in this song, and I thought I don't want to have swan in there as well, even though swans are a very kind of evocative bird. So I thought, right, let's do something that sounds similar. So we'll stick with the swimming, and we had Swan Swimmer, somebody who's vowed to never leave the ocean. And these images are from I found a lot of these from the Public Domain Review is the website, and this is like from a book that was images that were like predictions of what the year 2000 would look like from like, I don't know, 1900 or something, and maybe later than that, sorry, but yeah, and this piece was called Fishing for Seagulls, which is better than anything I could have possibly thought of for this. Now, I knew that this was going to be the one that was going to either win people over. If I was going to win people over with one of these failed careers, the Goose ALLAYER is up there, because the song is obviously 6 geese a-laying, as in laying, but you can allay something, you can sort of calm it down or like diminish it. So a Goose ALLAYER works, technically. These names are based on breeds of geese. The cavalry halters are a nod to Stop the Cavalry. And I think anything to do with the goose is going to be... It's going to get people excited, I think. There's a lot of cultural energy around geese, especially this year. So yeah, this one, it's ridiculous. I like the Goose Noose. There's a lot of what I've done a lot in this book, because I could kind of go a bit more crazy with things that I wouldn't have put in Electric Bastionland as like a real failed career. So here you're a lot more likely to just get some really stupid piece of equipment that like either doesn't make sense or perhaps the rules around it are a little bit janky. So the Goose Noose getting plus D8 damage versus large waterfowl is, you know, that might not have made it into the book. Gold Ring Grappler. Again, these I like that in Bastion wrestlers they look more like this than your kind of WWE wrestlers. It works for me somehow. The Bandage Group are a Band-Aid reference here. And these wrestler names are largely taken from a one-page role-playing game that I did years and years ago. Maybe 10 years ago, maybe slightly more. It might have been before. No, I think it was after I did the blog. I'm not sure. It was around 10 years ago, and it was called Skullados, and it was a sort of masked wrestler themed game, like one-page MS Paint game. And it was terrible and unplayable, but it was it meant I got to draw lots of little sort of masked luchadors in MS Paint, and these are some of the names that I had in there. COALIE Bird. Again, this one feels like it could fit in the book itself. The idea that the canaries down the mines, they had a better union than you did, so you are doing the job of a mine canary. You know, that works in Bastion. That's an instant fit for me. We've got lots of little silly references in here. We've got the never-ending bells. Don't let the bells end by the darkness. We've got Malady's prayer being the Millennium Prayer, which is a real deep cut, I feel. Fairy Tale of Bastion is pretty obvious. I wish it could be Oddmus every day. And I'm not going to be ashamed of this steps reference here. Heartbeat step. And our debt holder here is also, let me hide this here. It's also a little music reference. Sir Rickard of Precipice. This is not going to make much sense to anybody outside of the UK, I think, but we have Sir Cliff Richard. So a precipice being a cliff, Richard being Rickard, and he's a knight. So yeah, and he's immortal. I'm not going to explain who Cliff Richard is to people who aren't familiar already. Fancy Poulterer being our 3 French hens. Again, this is an image from the year 2000, imagining what the year 2000 would look like. And it's kind of horrifying in itself. So we have, these early ones I wrote earlier on, so I've like forgotten a lot of the things that are in here. Chris the Bird, being a reference to Chris de Burgh, whose song "A Spaceman Came Traveling" is pretty high on my Christmas list. And it's even made it into this. It's in here twice. That's how significant it is. I did laugh. I'm not going to be one of these people that pretends they're too cool to like laugh at their own jokes, because I do it all the time. Like if I write something stupid, it tends to like come out of my brain before I've really thought about it, and I'll either say it or type it, and then I'll look back at it and I will laugh at my own joke. I will admit that. And I did laugh quite a bit at the bird board. I don't know why, but that tickled me quite a lot. Bubbly Mick, being Michael Bublé. This is particularly interesting to anybody that's worked in retail in around Christmas time. I don't know if it was just where I was working, but it was very Bublé heavy on the Christmas music rotation. So you do learn to tune out Michael Bublé specifically after a while. The Western 17, being a nod to E17, and their Christmas song. And I think that's everything on there. Turtle Devotee. So I struggled with Turtle Dove. I went around Dove for ages trying to think about like Dove and like peace and like could it be that you're some kind of like peace talks person, but then just going for like a purely like it just something that just fits the sound of the word. Turtle Devotee. It works. It is probably, it could be the stupidest one in here. And that's saying something here. Because you're devoted to turtles, but you don't like tortoises. And the reasons why you like and dislike each of them might be kind of the same. So you might like the fact that turtles are green, but you don't like tortoises because they're too green. And that opens up a whole can of worms around whether tortoises are actually more green than turtles, but I'll let you have that discussion at your table. And finally, an apprentice to a pear tree. And yeah, this is like you need this one to be strong to make the whole rhyme work. But it is a very clunky name for a failed career. And it is a terrible pun, but I think it sets the tone for the rest of them. The references like June apple and juniper here are to do with, like, again, in sort of other versions of this song, there are references to like a juniper tree or a June apple. Mistletoe vine. The Cliff Richard references in here are strong. And yeah, that's what you get. So that is available now on itch.io and Drive-Thru RPG, but please buy it on itch.io instead.